Okay, let's talk about money, but not in the way you're used to. We're not going to get into stocks or budgeting spreadsheets. We're going to talk about the feeling of money and how the choices we make, even the small ones, can end up locking us into a future we never really planned for. We're going to explore a totally different way of looking at your financial life. And this quote right here, it just nails it, doesn't it? For pretty much all of us, finance isn't some interesting topic we study. It's this constant humming pressure in the background of our lives. It's the weight of making huge decisions with what feels like half the information, and it binds us to commitments way before we can see where they'll lead. We all try to make smart plans. We do the math, we read the articles, we try to do everything right, and still, things just seem to go off the rails. And listen, this has nothing to do with how smart you are. The problem is much, much deeper. It starts with the very map we're using to navigate our financial world. And that's the real issue here. The mental model, the map that most of us are given for our finances, is just, well, it's fundamentally wrong. It actually sets us up to fail before we even start, because it ignores the things that matter most in our actual, real lives. This is the classic approach, right? We think, if I can just figure out the best mortgage, or the optimal retirement plan, or the perfect budget, then I'll be set for life. But here's the thing. Your financial life is not some static math problem that has one single correct answer. The reality is just so much messier. The choices we make today literally create chains that our future selves have to live with. Our income? It's almost never a straight, predictable line. It's more like a choppy sea. And life? Well, life just loves to interrupt our best-laid plans. Any map that's actually useful has to account for all this chaos. So, this brings us to the first really big shift in how we need to think. The most powerful, most binding constraint in your financial life isn't money, it's time. This one idea can reframe everything. You think you're choosing between buying a house or renting today, but you're not. You're making a choice that travels with you through time. The path you pick becomes a part of your story, for good or for ill. And time is definitely not neutral. Think about it. Taking on a huge loan when you're 25 means you have decades to recover if you make a mistake. But that mistake also has way more time to compound and grow. Now make that same decision at 55. You have a lot less time to fix things, which makes that same commitment feel so much heavier. The action is the same, but the exposure over time is completely different. We often make these huge commitments because we tell ourselves we can undo them later. I can always just sell the house, or I can refinance that loan. We depend on this idea of reversibility. But in the world of finance, reversibility is, more often than not, a very dangerous illusion. And that's the trap, right there. The option to back out of a decision feels so solid, so reliable, right up until the exact moment you desperately need it. And that's usually when the pressure is at its peak, and, ironically, when your real options have all but vanished. So why is it an illusion? Because your ability to sell that thing or get out of that deal depends on a whole bunch of factors you have zero control over. It assumes your income will still be there. It assumes your health is good. It assumes there's someone out there willing to buy what you're selling. When those conditions disappear, so does your escape hatch. All right, so if time is the first major constraint we have to rethink, the next big one is income. We've all been taught to see it as a simple number on a paycheck, but we need to see it for what it really is, a process. We tend to think about our income like it's the column on the left, this stable, predictable number we can count on. But for most of us, the reality is the column on the right. Income is a variable process. It's a flow that speeds up and slows down, and sometimes it just stops. It's a reality that has to be managed, not just put into a budget. The honest truth is, even if your income feels super stable right now, that stability is probably temporary. Over the course of a lifetime, for most people, fluctuation isn't some disaster you plan for. It's just the norm. Yeah, we all plan for that career on the left, that nice, steady, upward climb. But reality? Reality usually looks a lot more like the path on the right. It bends, it stalls, it takes some wild detours. Our financial plans have to be built for this real messy path, not the fantasy one. Now, this next point is absolutely critical. We tend to think of big financial risks as something that happens later in life, but the truth is, a lot of that risk is front-loaded. Job losses, health problems, crazy unexpected expenses. They often hit us hardest early on, before we've had a chance to build up any savings or really get our careers going. Our exposure to risk often comes way before our preparation for it.
Okay, so we've got a flawed map, time working against us, and a volatile income. How on earth are we supposed to plan for anything? The answer is in our final and maybe most powerful mental shift. We need to learn how to plan without making predictions.
We have to completely change how we see uncertainty. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. In fact, the entire reason we plan is because the future is uncertain. A good plan doesn't try to magically get rid of uncertainty, it acknowledges it from the start and builds a strategy around it. This means we have to change the entire goal of the game. The goal is no longer to be right by perfectly guessing what's going to happen. The new goal is simply to build a financial life that has the resilience to take a punch and the flexibility to respond when things inevitably go sideways. So, this new way of thinking really boils down to three core ideas. First, we need to focus on preparation, not prediction. Second, we should aim for resilience, the ability to bend without breaking, instead of some fragile, optimized plan. And third, we need to build financial buffers, like savings, instead of chasing this impossible goal of perfect precision. What this all means is that we have to start seeing our financial lives differently. It's not a report card of right and wrong choices. It's a continuous sequence of judgments. Judgments that we have to make with incomplete information under a ton of uncertainty about a future we can never really see clearly. And you know what? That's okay. So I'll leave you with this one question to take with you. The next time you're facing a big financial decision, don't just ask, what's the optimal choice here? Ask yourself this instead. Of all my options, which one best preserves my ability to make a new choice later on? That little shift in perspective, it might just change everything.